I am starting recording and we are live.
Okay, well, I call the meeting to order. Let's do roll call to start with. Brent Buckelman,
Here?
Jeff,
Here.
Larry,
Here.
Jennifer, here, Brian,
Here.
Janice, here. Martha is absent this evening. Let's go ahead and look at last month's minutes for June. Any corrections?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Need a second?
I wasn't here, but I'll
It's gonna
say.
have to be, I was gonna say, it's
Yeah.
gonna have to be one of you
I was gonna
two.
say.
Either Jeff or Jennifer.
Or
No, it can't, those two are absent, so it's gotta
Yeah.
be one of you guys.
Oh, well, I wrote the minutes, so.
I was not here either,
Oh, you weren't here either.
so the minutes
Well, I
are.
was second that.
Oh, so you actually need the
We need
minutes
to
changed.
Yeah, I just didn't realize that. I was absent at last meeting.
Okay.
So who made the
Well,
motion?
I second.
I made the motion.
Okay, can you amend the motion to include that change?
I amend the motion to accept the minutes to exclude Brent Pockman being at that meeting. He was absent.
Because Martha was here last month.
Mhm.
So I second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Or I'll abstain.
However, yeah, I was saying, if I can accept, I'll accept. If I have to abstain, I'll abstain. Whatever
If you were
the rule
absent,
is.
you have to
Then I
abstain.
abstain.
Yep. You're good.
Okay. So let's go to the agenda for tonight. On old business,
I do not have a financial update, I forgot that. I will
Okay.
email that out.
we had, as
Would there have
you,
been anything that would have changed?
probably, no-
significantly?
there probably
We-
aren't any changes.
I think we
made.
paid for the stump grinder, that's the only thing that
Well, on the minutes from last month, you had that the stump grinder had been paid.
had been paid, okay, then I don't.
So there shouldn't really be any changes because we
No.
haven't done, I don't believe we've done anything that I'm aware of.
No.
So we should still have $28,341 in that account.
So report on Arbor Day, we kind of talked about that last month. That tree planting was done at Faith Christian School. We planted a sugar maple there. The kids actually did it. Turned out really well. It
Did
was
you
a
get
good.
some good pictures of that, Jennifer?
Can you forward those to me, please?
Okay.
I had them
Because you
digging, I
probably
had
have to
them,
submit that, don't you?
I had them digging in the dirt, playing with grubs.
They really had a
They
good
had,
time with it.
yeah, it was a pretty good little learning experience. I gave a good little tutoring session, didn't I?
Yeah, it was
it was-
actually, it was way more involved than I expected it would be, and I think kids really.
Oh, yeah.
And it
I
was
mean,
the last day of
It
school.
was the last day of school, and that was like the thing standing between them and like field day. So they, all trudged out there, but then I think they were all pretty excited about it.
Had the kids get in line up to take their turn at digging dirt out of the hole and then putting dirt back in after. That was good.
He let him
Well,
ask
I've looked at it
questions.
a couple times. It looks good. I mean, I was afraid maybe it was gonna drop leaves if nobody was watering it when it was really dry but it looks good.
Good.
Just too bad we didn't have Huggy there yet. That'd be perfect.
That is a question. Has that, I know that's a sideline, but has that come in, his
Oh, yeah.
costume?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the tree
It
suit.
has?
Oh, yeah,
Now
I've
I'm
worn
with
it.
you.
I have pictures.
So where did you wear it? Did you wear it?
Around my office.
Oh,
I was gonna say, can you
Oh, cool.
define Huggy for the public record, please?
Huggy the Tree.
Huggy the Tree.
It's a
Okay.
costume.
For
Yes.
tree hugging.
It's
Of a tree.
Oh, tree hugger. Okay.
Yep,
And then-
and the children can hug Huggy the
Nice.
Tree. Yep.
Okay. very
If
good.
they
We
choose
ordered
to.
it, we ordered it for First Friday
Yes.
in May, when we did,
Yeah.
and it didn't come in.
Ah.
And now we're planning to do First Friday again later in the season.
Okay.
We haven't
I would
determined.
do it August.
Oh, no.
I'm looking at August.
Now with Huggy, I wouldn't.
Huggy might be missing part of his costume if it happens in August.
That thing is hot and heavy.
I'm sure it is.
It is.
You know, they
But
have one in
it's-
October.
Yep,
Yeah,
I
but
think
it-
that's the one we were thinking,
I think
September or October.
It
So-
really does look, I'll show you a picture.
It's kind of a toss-up of whether it rains in October. It's like, that's usually the one, if it's gonna rain, it's usually either the May or the October one,
Yeah.
Friday that it rains, so.
I'll have a nice canopy, so I don't have to worry about that.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Huggy is very welcoming, not
Yes.
creepy at all.
I think we should do a home media campaign.
That's right.
Based on
Well-
Huggy,
Huggy says,
Huggy the Nut Tree.
He says, remember, take care of your trees.
I love it.
I can do it.
I love it.
Okay.
Anyways, carry on.
This is gonna stay on old business till it happens. Brent, your name is beside update on the tree board member guidelines. Have you made any
I've got
headway
stuff,
on
I've
that?
got guidelines pretty much done and ready. It was just a matter of what do we need to do ordinance-wise, whatever, to make them an official part of the ordinance.
We wanted to
So
create
Does
some,
that need to be in ordinance form? Can that be in a different form to be some member
Is that just a
guidelines?
policy or
I was
is
gonna
that
say,
a?
just, tell me what you're thinking, what you're kind of encapsulating.
well, we had some past people
Yep.
that didn't necessarily show up for more than maybe one meeting a year.
Gotcha.
And we feel as though if you're going to be on this board, you
Yeah.
need to participate.
Yeah.
And we've kind of come along where we're starting to do more projects like First Fridays, tree plantings, like we'll have
Keep talking, yep.
planting projects, Arbor Day, that kind of thing. So we wanted to come up with some sort of plan, policy, guideline, something that is going to say you need to participate in so many meetings a year.
Okay.
If we do 4 projects a year, you have to participate in half of them. I don't even know what this has kind of been an ongoing
It
thing.
just kind of depends on if we need to have it as part of an ordinance or if it can be its own standalone document.
Gotcha.
And we don't really know how to go to that. It's not, the guidelines are not extremely detailed.
Sure.
But it just kind of says, okay, this is what's expected of you. And if you're not going to do this, then we will find somebody who will.
So ordinance 32.078 of our code of ordinances currently says the board shall choose its own officers, make its own rules and regulations, and keep a journal of its proceedings. So I guess my response is you can do a hybrid thing where first of all, you have the full leeway and authority to make your own rules. Okay, that's what that ordinance says. So you can make whatever rules and regulations you want for your operations and for things like that. When it comes to actual membership, if there's an ordinance piece to that, you would need, okay, let me back up. If you want to set a standard of that members have to attend X amount of board meetings each year, that does have to go to an ordinance. Because the outlining of how members are appointed and dismissed and all that kind of stuff is outlined by ordinance 32.076. So the reason I say that is if you have a suggestion or a preference, if you will, of they need to attend at least 4 meetings a year, at least 6 meetings a year, at least half of the meetings a year, whatever that looks like, then that needs to go to ordinance form to Marcia for an ordinance revision, okay? So have I covered everything that probably would be covered in those guidelines, or is there something I've missed as a part of that?
No, it would be the numbers of meetings, it would be participation in projects.
Huh?
More about the activity than it is,
Yes.
any
So,
other requirements.
not to keep shooting off codes here, but 32.080 is actually listed as participation in cooperative projects. It says the tree board may at its discretion undertake and participate in cooperative projects, including but not limited to recycling of leaves, chips, et cetera, development of tree planting systems, development and use of a tree bank, education of public, blah, blah, blah. My point of saying all that is that, you know, if you wanted to put it in under the, like, here's a minimum standard we want for our members, or they will be automatically dismissed effectively, because that's what I hear you saying is, if you don't attend X amount of events or X amount of meetings, that you are effectively quiet quitting, right? Like you're not participating, right? Now, I would be real careful about how strict you get on that, because it's not super easy to find board members anymore in general, right? Or at least maybe good board members.
Well, I think would just be nice for new members to kind of know what's expected.
Yes.
Like, I might be wrong, but you guys kind of came on not knowing what we were
Sure.
expecting of you, and
Right.
it's a volunteer thing, and if you found that, you know, let's just say we do something like, okay, we do a tree planting project every month, and we do all of this stuff, you would have gone, whew, I don't know if I can do all that.
It makes sense.
I think at the very least, we want a certain number, a percentage of participation in these meetings. And if that's the case, we're talking ordinance.
Yes.
So to answer your question, yes, we are talking an ordinance change. Participation in events that we may put on, I think that is secondary to showing up to the meetings. If you're not even going to show up to the meetings, I think then,
Well, I think there just are ways to have rules and procedures in a standalone situation where it's not in ordinance form. Since it's in ordinance form now, with some of the guidelines, I say, we need to, you know,
So one thing you guys can consider, which other boards and commissions do sometimes frequently, is that every year at the beginning of the year, you guys do it right off the outset, you say, okay, we're gonna develop our rules and procedures for this year. And here's what we're all agreeing to at the beginning of the year, right? And so that way, it's every year, all the board members on board have participation in it, and effectively, you're signing a covenant to each other saying, we agree that we're going to attend at least half of the after hours events, and at least, you know, and by ordinance, we have to attend at least half of the meetings, or whatever the case is, right? So, you know, but the other piece of that is that if you set that standard for attendance at meetings, then if someone is not attending that standard, whatever that standard is that I gotta remember here, the appointing body has to be notified that they're not meeting the code or the ordinance, right? So obviously, some of you are appointed by me, some of you are appointed by the council. So the appointing body would need to be notified by the board, this person is not meeting this ordinance. Does that make sense?
That makes that more clear, so we know what to do.
Yeah. So I think from
Because in
a,
the past, I
again-
don't think we knew what we,
Well, in the tree board, officially speaking, you guys have no authority to kick off other members.
right.
That's the appointing board, right?
But I don't think we knew that we needed to contact.
Gotcha, that this person hasn't been attending or whatever
Yes.
the case is, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think honestly, it may formally make sense to have that notification come from the board.
how
Now,
about
it
if
doesn't
we-
have to be that way, I mean, it could just be,
How about if we say this? Would you be interested, whomever, of speaking with Marcia about you coming up with your own ideas of what you would like to see out of the board? Knowing what our ideas are
Sure.
of coming up with,
you know,
I don't want to be, we don't need to be putting words in your mouth.
yeah.
I mean, if that's something that you would rather construct with what
Yeah.
information we have,
Well, my initial reaction to that, Brent, I'm not opposed to that, by the way. I mean, my initial reaction is, I think the minimum should be at least once a quarter. I know that's not the standard you want to hold yourselves to, if you will, but I think a minimum of once a quarter is a reasonable and rational expectation of somebody, right? So at least 4 meetings a year, I think is a reasonable, that's a low bar, right? Like, that's the
Does
floor.
that go for me too?
That's the floor. No, you don't
Okay.
count. That's the floor, because you're not a voting member. That's the floor. But I think when it comes to rules and procedures, I really think that needs to originate here. So the membership, because I select it and the council selects it, I think that's why that needs to be a more formal process. But as for rules and procedures, I think that's something that you guys are best to know. So the ordinance, yes, 100%. If you guys, now, if you say we want to have the members at least half of the meetings, then that's a case that needs to be made to the council of that's the good standard, right? If we say every quarter, that's a case that needs to be made to the council, because it's an ordinance. So, but I personally would say, there's a couple ways you can do it. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either say, if a member doesn't show up for 4 straight meetings, right? You can do it that way. Or you can say, over a year's time during their tenure, because you guys most of you are 4-year terms, right? Are you 4-year terms? I think so. I think you're 4-year terms.
I thought
didn't
it
know
was
you could
3.
get out of it.
Yeah, I know. I thought we were just stuck
I
on
didn't
it.
know you could
Actually,
get
I
out of
thought it
it
was a
if you're
3-year
Maybe it's a
term.
3-year term. They're all different. So if it's a 3-year term, the point of the matter is after a year, you can look back and say, okay, that person only attended 2 of the 8, 2 of the 10, 2 of the 15 meetings that we had, whatever. Then clearly, obviously, that they're not meeting the expectation. So, and frankly, as an appointing body, like, I want to know that for sure, to say, okay, and,
Well, we're really
This is an
pretty
issue.
good now, so.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we're on a
yeah.
really good
And it's
track,
taken-
all of us.
I know it's taken a slog to get
Uh-huh.
to where you're at now. I get you. So there's 2 different ways.
So
Either
what
hey, you've missed X amount of meetings in a row, you're kind of stepping away on your own, or the other side of, you have to make at least half the meetings or a quarter of the meetings a year, whatever it is.
Is it possible for us to put it just in our own rules and procedures that if a member doesn't attend more than once a quarter, that the appointing body is notified for their decision
Sure.
on whether to
Yeah.
remain appointed or appoint a new member?
So the only.
I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
just to save
Whole
the
bunch
trouble of going
legality.
through ordinance amendments
Yeah,
and that kind of thing, can we put it in our own rules and procedures that we report to you on attendance if a member is not attending once every quarter? And I don't think once every quarter is too low of a bar. I think that's an okay.
So the only thing I was looking at,
Because if Larry goes out and
Yeah.
breaks his hip,
yeah, you're gonna, yeah,
he might not make it to a few meetings.
yeah.
And pretty soon,
Yeah, it would have
Janice's
to
dog
be,
died, so that pool.
right. There's too many things that could put one of us into a situation that all of a sudden we don't, and now we've set up our own self to be booted off of it.
So what's curious about the code on that note, what's curious about the code is that unless I'm missing it, which is possible, but unless I'm missing it, there is no formal dismissal procedure. So in a lot of our boards, it will say with cause or without cause. With cause that's really hard to, basically the appointing body has to prove that there's a good reason to get the person off the board, to dismiss them from the board. Without cause is, well, you sneezed wrong, so I'm gonna kick you off. Or I come in and I'm a new mayor from a different party or something, and
Yeah,
we're
I don't
gonna
like
get,
you.
the other, whatever, those kind of things, right? But in the tree board, what I'm noticing in the code, at least unless I'm missing it, is there is not a with cause or without cause dismissal. So it almost could be created to, I think, unless there's a state code that backs it up, we can kind of create what we want on that dismissal piece. So what I can do is, if I'm hearing you correctly, what I can do is maybe chat with Marcia a little bit about kind of what I'm hearing from you guys, and maybe have her talk through stuff. Yeah, Jennifer.
Would it make any sense to check the listserv and see
Yeah.
what other communities are doing in that respect?
Absolutely, and that's what, part of me says, if there is a state code that backs up the tree board piece, that may already, but usually there's a reference from the state code, from our code to the state code to say, this is the procedure. I don't see that in here, but I'm gonna check on that. So, point of the matter is yes, I'll definitely reach out to the listserv. Obviously, Jennifer, being a council member, I welcome your feedback as a part of that as well, because obviously it's your body that's gonna be passing that ordinance change. But I do think the dismissal of member and kind of that standard of, you know, again, if they're gone for 4 straight meetings or 5 straight meetings or every quarter or whatever, so.
Well, and this is kind of a procedural thing, and I don't know whether that would, show up in the ordinance, but, sometimes even the chair or a member checking in with somebody and saying, hey, we noticed you're not attending any
Yes.
meeting. Is this still working for you?
Yep, absolutely.
And that'd be the, without cause. It's just, they're,
Well, and I mean, we've done that in other boards,
Okay.
where they don't show up, they don't show up, they don't show up.
and if they do
Finally,
say,
it's
yes,
like,
I do still want to, then
Yeah.
you say, well, then you're
Yeah,
gonna need to.
then I need you to come.
You're gonna have to step it up.
Because you were selected for your
Yeah.
participation and your value that you bring to
Right.
that board, so.
We're a small community, so we
Yes.
want to stay on
I
good
think
terms with
that's
everybody.
Very reasonable to
Yeah.
handle it that way.
Yeah.
So then we will wait to hear from you.
Yeah, I will see what I can get together and maybe by your next meeting, we'll see. But again, what I think, so if depending on what I can get together, then put it in front of you to say, yes, we like it, no, we hate it, etc. And then after you guys finally say, yes, we like it, then we'll put it on the council meeting. Right? So, okay.
Okay. The next thing I had, on old business, I still had Radio Road project.
Get it going. County's okay.
Okay, so
Should've been done last week.
County's okay
I'm not
with,
sure what
County,
that-
we had to hold up, the county had yet to approve it. I didn't know if it had to go through the county highway and then
Okay.
through the county
the
commissioners.
whole project in general, they had to,
Well, no, just planning on the county highway.
oh, okay.
And so Janice didn't want to come in and do part of it, not
Right.
all of it. So now I have the county's blessing, we do not have to take it to the county council.
Okay.
So what's our involvement, if any?
at this point, there isn't any. We discussed a couple meetings ago about whether we wanted to help fund that project or whether we didn't. And our decision was to, if there's more pieces that want to be added to this project, then we may be interested in funding parts of that.
Okay.
For example, like right now, the plan is, I can't tell you exactly how many, but there's like maybe 10 deciduous trees along the path that's going to be made. And let's say the 10 trees get planted and we as a tree board want to plant we want to fund another 5 trees or 10 trees, then that will be an added addition to that project.
But we will discuss that later.
Yes, yes, I
Whether we
think
want
right
to do
now,
that.
this part or piece of this needs to be done first.
Okay.
Quick question on the Radio Road. I want to pull something up here before I open mouth.
And we are in city limits and we can, and even though we are not funding it, we can discuss it and add,
Guide.
yes, guide.
Guide.
Well, and I think some of that guidance has already to fruition of planting up on the county's hill instead of just planting down in the low ground and waiting 135 years to get.
Right, to cover that up.
Do those trees get higher than 6 feet?
Right, and block what you were intending to block.
Yeah, the whole project.
So I think it was pretty evident that there was some guidance there that was already taken into consideration. My question was, with the property that Braden owns, how did is that easement, did the city acquire easement for that
Yes.
trail? Did we?
Easement, and he, That's why I kind of want to get going. He is completely fine with us doing whatever we,
I understand, but with that property being for sale, is the new property owner going to be in as good a graces as
that's why I kind of
we
want
want to get it
going.
moving? Okay, that was.
Yes.
I was just curious as I saw that was for sale, and I didn't know how that was.
Yeah.
But it is on the easement, is that correct?
We're going to be planning near the easement.
Okay,
I only have a 14-foot easement.
So.
got it.
Mayor, you responded to a Facebook question I had. So the trail is going to go underneath the road? Is that
No,
the plan?
Chip, you want to discuss the trail real quick?
So the trail will leave, it ends kind of at the bridge at State Road 9, right there by the Ready Mix. It'll go along the bridge. It'll be wide enough for a 10-foot wide and I believe a guardrail. They're throwing around words that I don't know about guardrails and different things like
Okay.
that. Then it'll go up to where the dairy barn is, the gas station.
Okay.
Cross over, there'll be an island there, so you can stop in the island, and then you can cross the other lane of
okay,
traffic.
Okay, yep.
Go down Spencer, cut down Chauncey, and if you go over Vine Street, there's a trail there now, but is not enforced. Several
Well,
trucks
it's really
park on
not
it.
utilized because it kind
Yeah,
of goes nowhere.
it just, and so it'll take that same path and then go down Line Street, go over the railroad tracks, go on the railroad tracks.
Okay.
And then kind of snake around behind the county highway department, alongside that, between that and the Braden property. And then just, it'll merge up onto Radio Road and go across Radio Road.
Okay.
There'll be
So like
a-
at the middle part of Radio Road is where the crossover will be, so it's safety from coming
Right,
from both
Yeah,
sides.
Right.
and then we have a bridge that then will go over the Blue River.
Okay.
And
Is
so,
it just going to be a walk bridge over Blue River, or is it going to be, are you redoing the,
no, it'll be a walk bridge.
It's not gonna be an attachment.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, is it going to be an extension?
Yeah, it'll be
No.
its own bridge, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Down, I want to say maybe 50, 75 yards from the current bridge.
Okay.
Funny thing is, we had to make the bridge wildlife,
Friendly.
that was the big issue at DNR. There's no bridge there now, but the new bridge had to allow for wildlife to cross on it,
On the bridge?
on the bridge, yes.
Oh, and I'm sure there was all sorts of
So watch out for bunnies. And jump in the river.
floodway regulations that you had to go through, and
That wasn't bad. That was, the only issue was our bridge had too wide of openings for,
For the bunnies.
whatever animal would cross over it.
interesting.
We'll have to put in some signage so the
Yeah,
animals
well,
know.
make sure bunnies not allowed.
Watch your feet,
Our bunnies come this way.
So, sort of a side question on that. Our golf carts are not allowed on that trail at all, are they?
I believe they are now.
That was changed. That was changed.
Yes.
So golf carts are now allowed to go on the trail between Morses Park and Demone Grimes. That segment of the trail is now accessible by golf cart, yes.
Yeah, 'cause
So in that back, kind of
By-
behind.
By Kroger, so
Countryside Mobile
So
Home
Yeah.
Park.
that
Yeah.
yellow post
Has
has
been
been
removed.
removed?
Well, there's some people who take it because they don't want to cross 30.
Yes.
Right, that was
yes.
the reason
And
why it was
actually,
approved.
So that was, it went from the park board who suggested it to the council. The council approved it unanimously because of the safety factor.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they can't be on, say, the one that goes along is it Blue River?
The Blue River?
They can't use that whole aspect.
That is not.
No.
no.
and so that would be like, oh,
Unless it's a police vehicle, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
that's what's the Y through.
So
From
this
the Y to
new
the-
bridge, I guess what I'm getting at, this new bridge is not going to accommodate golf carts?
No.
Okay.
Not as currently planned, at least. No.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's move on to new business. I don't have a lot. The one thing I put on was, last year, we set a date to plant Ace Hardware sold us trees.
And we've got about 26 trees yet.
And that's why I was gonna ask you tonight if they have marked them down or if they're
They're
willing.
at 25% off right now. So.
And didn't know if any discussion had been done yet about selling them like we did last
I talked to
year.
them, I said, as soon as you're ready to drop it to 40, let me know.
Okay, because that's what we did last year. It was a 40% discount.
And there are 3 really nice lindens that are there with about 4-inch trunks. So thinking about where to put them or whatever. you know,
Yep.
it'd be kind of nice.
115 East, no, just-
So, that's what that line is date for tree planting. If we want to do that again, where we want to target planting them, I think September would be a great time.
I say absolutely, and I think we should target the same area that we targeted before.
I do
I think
too.
the lack of street trees out in those new subdivisions on the east side of town needs to be
I
addressed.
think we ought to
Yeah.
just keep going like we did.
Yep.
If we
Yeah.
It
don't
was
do-
Hannah Street extended.
I think
Yeah, no, that's what we've said. Let's
it is a little
keep.
bit of a tree desert out there.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, you have a bunch of wooded areas, right? And
Yes.
Around, but
Yeah.
the actual street fronts are not.
Yeah, and what we're really trying to do is make sure that the street is shaded, because that's what's producing most of the heat in
Yeah,
our communities.
absolutely.
It's that asphalt, reflecting the heat back, so.
So is that the only tree planting we'll plan on doing then? is
Yeah, I was just
what?
gonna ask that too.
Well, that's what we need to,
That'll be next.
the next item is update on the grants, because Chip's been working on. Yeah.
He used pen this time instead of crayons.
Sharpie. So we applied for I want to say it was $74,000 grant. $6,000 of that was to redo our tree management plan. And 68,000 of that was trees, so that would be 125 trees planting throughout that area. But I'm not 100% confident we're gonna get the grant, so I suggest going after the tree planting. I mean, I'm confident on the grant, but I have who knows what the DNR is gonna do.
So when is that grant made known if we get?
August 30th, I wanna say.
Oh, okay.
So if we would get it, that is definitely something that is still very doable that we can do this fall.
Yeah.
That we can get bids, because I'm assuming we're not gonna, as a
Yeah,
tree board,
let's
want to
not do
plant
that. Let's-
125
No.
trees.
No, I think that might be something we outsource.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
mean, let's
something we
at
can.
least plant 1 or 2s with, photographers there, then have somebody else do it. That's what I say.
The photographers leave and
That's when
then,
you're using other people's money.
Right.
And
Yes, I think that would be the best route to go on that. I love planting the Ace Hardware trees. I think that's fabulous.
do we still want to try to get one by Mary Raber, when we were talking about doing that, like that spot out front of Mary Raber? Or is that not going
They
to work?
requested one behind the school, and it's a certain, so I'm kinda,
We're leaving that alone.
That's their part.
Okay, oh,
Yeah.
I just was curious. We talked about it, I didn't,
Yeah.
okay.
Save it for Arbor Day.
we
we go
could
that
plant one in
direction.
front if we want to and just request that, but yeah, for Arbor Day, they want a special
When
certain
we get-
tree and.
I'd like to see Arbor Day come back to Mary River. Just my personal preference.
It was bad planning on both of our parts.
If, this was something Larry has talked about multiple times, that Mary Raber in the parking lot, and there's about 5 feet.
That's what I'm talking
Yep.
about, is that one, yeah.
And those lindens, if you wanted to do that, those lindens would be a great tree to plant in that section,
Yeah,
because the shape of a linden will, it won't overpower that area. And that could be done. Now, I know that's not on Hannah Street Extended,
Isn't
but
there already a linden in front of Mary River? Isn't there a ginkgo, a linden, a Norway maple,
I know there's a.
crab apple? What is it?
There's a couple crab apples. This is, do you know where we're talking?
Yeah,
on this?
between
There's-
Linville's property and the
Yeah.
school, that
Correct,
parking
it was
lot
where
to
they
the-
put that new
To
parking
the
lot in.
south end of that just has
Yep.
that park strip that's vacant.
Yep,
Yeah, I do. No, I think a linden would be great.
even
there,
if we
too.
did one there,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
so, I guess I think we need some sort of motion that we're all on board about doing this, tree planting in September with Ace Hardware trees.
I make a motion that we if it reaches the proper discount that we purchase the trees from Ace Hardware and proceed with a tree planting in the Hannah Street area in September, October.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I will say, I think we need to, as we did last year, maybe be a little proactive. So as soon as we know we're getting those trees, start reaching out to groups, whether it be 4-H groups or whatever. I think we had a group, who was that with last year that we had a group of people come? I know Sandy Cohut was there with her grandson, I believe. Who
Didn't we have some, did we?
We had talked about
Did somebody
scouts.
report?
We had talked about
I think
seeing
we
if
talked about,
scouts.
we talked about some scout groups, we talked about junior leaders group, we had talked about whatever, and I think we just put it out there on Facebook and said, hey, if anybody
Yeah,
wants to come and
yeah.
join, and we had a handful of people come out and assist. But I think if we kind of honed in a little bit on those service project oriented youth groups, that we may have more help planting trees and, doing the mulch, doing the stakes. I think Dave Bursell, a friend of mine, came and helped. And-
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, it may help them in a project that they need to do and help us with a project we need to get done. So
Yep.
maybe start thinking about some of that here for the next meeting.
I've been really wanting to talk to Brady Mullet anyways about his Hort class at Eagle Tech. So I'll volunteer to talk to Brady so I can find out who is in
Who's the
charge of that
contact?
tech class. That seems like a natural to me that that some, a couple of those kids want
Yeah.
to get involved, so I will contact Brady.
And you may, in addition to that Hort class, and they may end up being the same person, find out contact for the FFA as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a very active
Yeah. Yeah.
group, at least
They do a good job.
scholarly
Yep.
they are.
One other thought, depending on how, how open or not open you want to be about this is, we can always post something on social media a day or two before that says, hey, we're having a planting event. If you want to show up at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning or whatever, we can always do that.
Planting
So,
party.
Yep.
Yep.
Chip will provide donuts. So.
Sweet. After we're done.
Well, I am so glad you were here tonight.
I know,
I've got
aren't you
volunteered for
glad?
so much stuff between these
Aren't you
two
glad?
meetings, so.
Okay, that is all I have on the,
Just one thing to kind of throw out there, maybe more of a discussion or anything, but one thing we have been talking about, and Chip's been helping us with this as well, but right now, there's a requirement that when a developer builds a house,
Yep.
they have to put a tree in the front yard. For our purposes, we'd be a whole lot happier if they put the tree on the boulevard, on the easement out front of the house, and that it was actually a shade tree, not an
Okay.
ornamental tree or
Okay.
whatever second they got somewhere, sort of thing. What's involved in getting that change made so that it begins to happen?
So that's normally through plan commission.
I was gonna say, so that would be a recommendation from this board to the plan commission to change the subdivision standards or the construction standards or whatever the case is
Yeah,
there. I
development
mean,
standards and
Yeah, the building,
subdivision.
yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, if that's a formal request for a change in the ordinance, I'm sorry, well, yeah, it is zoning ordinance, it's the same thing too. So, if it's a formal request by the tree board, because you guys are the ones that, look over the trees or at least, say, yes, we like this and we don't like this kind of thing. I think a formal request to the plan commission to make that change, I think makes a lot of sense. The bigger question is does the ordinance get changed by the plan commission or by the council? Because I know the plan commission enforces the ordinance, but I don't know if they actually pass the ordinance.
If it were county,
Yeah,
it would be, the plan commission would go through and make the revisions, and that they would or rephrase that, commissioners would instill the plan commission to amend the ordinance for them to approve. So
It's-
it may be the same way, it would be council
Probably is.
proposing to the plan commission to make changes to this, to the code for them to approve. I can find out.
I was
can
gonna
find
say, because my thought pattern says tree board, because you guys are the ones, again, that look over that stuff, make the suggestion to plan commission then suggests to the council for a actual ordinance change. But I don't, again,
I'll find out.
Nathan will know all that stuff.
I'll find out tomorrow.
So, but I would just say, point of the matter is, I think a formal recommendation, whether it's to the plan commission or to the council,
Put it on the agenda for next meeting.
a formal recommendation by this board of, our preference or because of our experience or whatever, we would prefer to make this change because it will help with X or Y.
So as a board, I'll put that on the agenda for next month, and we'll see if we can come up
I'll
with
find out
some
from-
wording
I'll find out from
and
you.
then make a formal request.
During any development plan review or any tech review of any subdivision or commercial properties, landscape and planning, that's
And
a
it usually falls
required-
back to Nathan and I too,
Yeah,
so.
it's usually a required thing of any development. Just not the street trees. A lot of times because it's not their property. They're not making the decision on that property, so you're saying.
Well, I feel like
essentially, yeah.
street trees too get a negative connotation because of all the sugar maples with their root system busting up sidewalks. As long as we can, maybe give suggestions of what, a deep-rooted tree so we don't have sidewalk issues.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I have a clear understanding, Jeff, of what you're saying, is that the preference of the tree board would be that it's not in the people's yard, but instead to become an actual street tree?
Correct.
Correct, okay. And I don't have a problem with that, but for many years, we tried to push people away from putting things in the right of way and put it in their private yard, so it's not our responsibility.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is the
Yeah.
opposite of that.
It is.
Which would be a change. But I guess the follow-up question to that would be is, we have had, maybe you know where I'm going with this. We have had a conversation going for, I don't know, I'm gonna say 7 years now, about how to handle street trees, and officially, with state code and legal cases that have came through, as well as how to communicate to the public that while we inventory these things and we will prune from time to time, and sometimes we take them down, ultimately, the property owner is responsible for that tree. That's a really hard conversation to have when you have a tree board that maintains the tree canopy that's in the right of way, right? And says, we're gonna prune it this day even if you don't like it, right? And, I mean, unless you sign off and take liability,
Yeah.
right? Or we're gonna have to cut it down because it's diseased or things like that. But the other side of, if there's a storm that comes through and knocks down, if the tree falls in your front yard, that's not a tree board responsibility, that's a private responsibility. I've had that conversation on Main Street
Sure.
and it sucked.
Yeah.
It was terrible, right?
Yeah.
So I just say that to say, I think it's almost a part and parcel thing is if we're gonna make that change, we also need to make sure that we have the street tree ordinance and things as a part of that, cleaned up,
Yeah,
which has been a long work in progress.
right.
I think what we're after, I believe, is a change in thinking about the tree canopy of this city.
Okay?
I don't know how many of us believe that it's getting hotter and hotter every year, but I think a lot of people believe that shading asphalt and concrete is paramount to maintaining healthy cities.
Sure.
And the attitude that we don't want to put any trees in an area that might become a liability how do you do both? How do you shade structures?
Sure.
How do you do that?
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, to answer your
that's-
question, I mean,
My thinking or my issue with all of that is, I plant trees. I plant trees on a weekly basis.
Right.
And in some of these new housing additions, they have the ordinance or they have the rules that they have to have 2 trees, 5 shrubs. However, there's no specifics on what kind of a tree. So they're getting by with a little ornamental Rosa Sharon
Right.
tree
Right.
that shades nothing. It's up at right at the corner of their house, that's fine. It's pretty. But it's doing nothing for our tree canopy. It's doing nothing to give us any shade, give them any shade.
Right. So, yeah,
And
you
so
can't
many
go out in your
people
garden, so,
don't
yeah.
understand that planting a tree that's going to grow to be a shade tree is only going to help to cool their house, only help in time to help them energy efficiency.
not to mention all the stormwater it sucks up
Yeah.
Correct.
every time
Correct.
there's rain.
So I don't
That
know
ornamental
if we
tree does
can
not.
put it in we want it planted as a street tree.
Yeah.
I think the ordinance needs to be thought or changed when these new housing additions are going in. It has to be, okay, it can be one ornamental tree, but it has to be a shade tree too, because, or they're planting conifers. Well, a spruce tree is doing nothing other than, you can decorate it for Christmas. It's
Yeah.
doing nothing to shade,
Yeah.
per se.
Well, and again, I would say the zoning code can be, generally speaking, within reason, anything we really want it to be. I mean, we could be the most restrictive and say you need to have 5 trees. 3 of them need to be maple, 1 oak, and 1 elm, and they need to be placed in miscellaneous pieces of the property unless you get a special variance or something, right? Like, we can be that restrictive. I would not support that, but my point is, I mean, ultimately, from the tree board's perspective, I think if you're going to make suggestions to changes to the ordinance, I would suggest you be thoughtful about the other things you want to be a part. Like, if you want to make it so an ornamental tree doesn't count effectively, that it has to be a shade tree somewhere on the property, I would include that as a part of the recommendation to change. I mean, you guys, again, there is no other tree board in Whitley. I don't know if there is in Cherubusco or South Whitley, but I don't think there's any other tree board in Whitley County. You guys are unique. And so you all were chosen for certain reasons to be on this board. And if the recommendation of this board is we think that ornamental trees shouldn't count and that there needs to be at least 1 shade tree on every property, on every new residential development, housing, parcel, make that suggestion. And then the policymakers can fight and argue about whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. But if you guys think it's in the best interest of our city and the future of our city, I think you should suggest it.
I think it would be a good education point too, because people probably do think they're doing the right thing by planting something and they don't know that that's not helping. Or, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
If somebody's told me to go to the store and buy some trees, like, that looks okay, yeah.
Sure.
Do I think that will live at my house? Like, well, I don't know.
Can I take care of this?
Right. I don't have a good track record for like plants.
Leaves drop off.
Right.
Yeah, so I would just say if you are going to make a recommendation of a change, be encompassing of that, be all encompassing of that. Show, I mean, if there are things in our code that are deficient, because let's face it, some of these pieces of the code probably haven't been updated in decades.
I
Well,
think
I-
also, like, when it goes to these meetings, it would be really helpful, even for the education factor of it, to talk about it. Even if it didn't get passed, to be able to say, like, a Rosa Sharon, like, it's pretty, but it's not helping anything. Here
Or
are
a tree
5.
management plan laid out. I had no clue of this, of what trees sequester more carbon, what trees provide more cooling. I was just like,
Right, or just suggest like these 5 trees would be a better choice so that somebody can go like, oh, okay, well, next time I'm in a situation where I need to pick a tree, I'm gonna pick one of these because
Sure.
that's apparently a better choice.
Well, and I think too, to answer the question about the right-of-way trees, you know, if we receive a grant like this where we can pick the trees, you know, there are species that do much better as street trees than others. You know.
We had that a few years ago.
What's that?
We had that a few years ago when we were told we had to plant tulip poplar. And then the person planting them, which was me, had to guarantee them. And I said, they're not gonna live. They're not gonna live. And I lost 30, 40% of them. It was a
Yeah.
bunch of them.
Really?
And, you know,
Because of where they were planted?
Yeah, tulip poplars don't do well as street trees.
Uh-huh.
And we were planting them late in the fall, and we were required, it was a grant, so we were required to tear the root ball apart.
Oh, I remember that.
And we had to do
yes.
root pruning on them.
Oh my gosh.
And I was required to do it. It was a grant. Davy came up and then I lost them, and I had to replace them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was very frustrating from my standpoint because I knew it was not a good,
Yeah.
it wasn't good.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately, you know, we all know what our Bradford pear friends, you know, what's going on there and all that situation, right? And
Right.
so I think the challenge is, you know, typically people like what? Clean, pretty trees, right? Clean and pretty. Unfortunately, a lot of clean and pretty trees are not necessarily native to the area and are not made to be in this environment. So I think the challenge is you know, we want to have a diverse tree inventory, as you all know. We want to have diversity in our tree stock so that it staves off the Asian horned beetle and the emerald ash borer and all of those things. But the other side of that also is we also know that a lot of residents don't want to have to clean up after dirty trees. And so it's always that balance of how do we keep a diverse stock. And so, but yes, I do remember that grant, and it was bad. And
Yeah.
you said it was bad. I mean,
It was frustrating.
you
That
said it was bad from the
frustrating.
beginning. It was like, we don't do this, but this is what we have to do. So, but anyway, so I do think that, you know, again, if you guys get the tree grant, I think that creates a huge opportunity. But going back to the actual development piece, I don't think it's too much to ask to give a list, if you want, give a list of native trees and say, you can pick one tree from this list. Now, I wouldn't make it 3 trees and they have to pick
Right.
from one of these 3 trees, right? But you could say, these are all native to Indiana, or you could just say one native Indiana species, you know, of shade tree or something. So you guys can make it kind of what you want to do. Again, the worst thing that the appointing or the deciding body can say is no. And then you have what you currently have, right?
Yep.
So you're really
Right.
not behind, so.
Right. Okay, do we have any other additions that we need to discuss tonight?
Yes, I was asked at the last meeting to find a certified arborist. And today, I found one. I had reached out, remember Jeff, we went to that training session and I met the 2 guys from Fort Wayne and they were both interested and I texted both of them and neither one responded. So today I called Seth Slayball. You know Seth?
He's the one that did our,
On-site
Yeah.
tree pruning? And I said, Seth, we're looking for a certified arborist to evaluate our tree population. Would you be interested? And he said, oh, yeah, I would be. As a matter of fact, he's getting certified in risk assessment. That's you know, there's different levels of certification, and risk assessment certification requires further training, but that is one that we would really want to have.
That'd be valuable.
That would be very valuable. So I told him we were having a meeting tonight, and I would tell board members about this potential, and that I would be getting back to him. I don't know him personally. Do you know him at all? Seth Slayball. Chip, you've dealt with him?
I've just dealt with them over the phone.
Over the
That's it.
phone? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's all
Yeah.
that's all I've dealt with them.
Evidently, he's a younger guy. I thought he told me he was in his 20s. That's when I asked him if he knew anything about Tree Keeper 8. And he explained to me, oh, well, it's a program, right? I said, yeah. Well, no big deal. I understand most programs. I said, well, lucky you. I'm 77 and I don't. So,
He's 20-something.
yeah, he's 20-something. So anyways, I told him I'd be back in touch with him. Any thoughts, any,
I guess my one did we feel they did a good job with the tree removal? Like, it's like, I mean, I'm saying, like, it's not knowing him personally, but it's like, okay, well, this is your company, or you do, did they do a good job with what, we asked them to do? Is it?
Yeah, good communication.
And then, in that case, I'd say,
And he's fairly local, right?
I think
I think he's
Albion.
The Albion.
yeah.
So we're talking about someone who wouldn't, if we did need his services, even on a fairly quick basis, wouldn't be 3 hours of drive time that we would be paying for.
Yeah.
For a 5-minute consult
Yeah,
or
he's
something.
semi-local, yeah.
I think you ought to see if he'd like to come to next month's meeting, or set up a time to talk with him.
Like we
Because
did
it's
with
one,
Lewis?
yeah, it's one of those things, yes, I'm interested, but until it's spelled out what we're asking, we don't know,
Yeah.
we don't know if he's really interested.
Might I suggest that maybe you have him put together a statement of qualifications, why he's qualified for the position? And I would also maybe suggest an idea of like, what is a potential hourly rate or something like that?
I asked
And then I think if you bring that to the table, then you guys can talk about some kind of maybe a year-long contract or a starter contract kind of a thing to say, these are the terms. And again, Marcia can write out all those things. So if you want Marcia to come to a meeting, just make sure she is aware in advance and she can usually attend these. So, so that way, then at least you guys know who he is and you have his qualifications and what he's, and that kind of stuff, and you guys can make a decision.
Because that's where we got stopped with Lewis from Apex, was the hourly rate, and when we started giving what we were expecting, it was too much. He could not.
Right.
He knew it before we,
That's kind of what
Moved forward,
I
so.
wondered what we are expecting. So we need to go over that again.
I
What all
will
do
pull
we
that back
want
up, because I
in
still
our
have
list?
those notes, what we
Okay.
talked with Lewis about.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe we hold off talking to him, inviting him to the next meeting. Let's take time at the next meeting to get all of our ducks in a row. Give him time to respond back to us with that information. We can discuss that, so that at the next meeting.
I think so.
So the meeting in September. So I think you should talk with him, call him talk that we discussed this, and that we're gonna decide some expectations. But I think you ought to touch back with him like now, and don't wait
Right.
don't wait a month or something to,
No, I.
Get back with
I
him.
agree with that, I'll at least get back to him and say, yes, we're interested in talking further with you, but we're developing some guidelines of what we're expecting. He's going to be taking that risk management test, I think he said in August. And later in August, then he would be certified or not, one or the other, it depends. But I agree. I think we should take the next meeting and set down the list of things we want, need. Okay,
Agreed.
all right.
okay. Anything else?
I'd like to thank the Mayor for coming
Yeah, thank you,
tonight.
Ryan.
It was a pleasant surprise.
Been a little
Thank
long.
you.
Sorry, I should have been here earlier, but appreciate the work you guys are doing and stuff, and with this being the first time we're recording and all that stuff, want to make sure I was here to help Chip, make sure he has all the T's crossed and I's dotted. But as always, you know, if there's a meeting you need me to be at, just let me know in advance. I'm happy to try to make it and be here for you guys. I think you guys are doing good stuff. I will try to get all of my responsibilities here taken care of before your next meeting, so you have something in hand. So,
Good, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.